Get ready to raid.
Get ready to raid.
Explore and fight.
Explore and fight.
Choose your champions.
Choose your champions.
Defeat bosses.
Defeat bosses.
Win PvP battles.
Yeah, maybe not.
Raid Shadow Legends.
Raid Shadow Legends. This game has reached 6 years old as of like a week ago, and it has had its anniversary stuff going on. And that is why over the past 2 weeks or a week, or I don't even know how long now, I have re-downloaded the game after 3 years of not playing it, and I am giving it another try. And I'm going to share my experience as a new / returning player with the game. This game is notorious for being like top tier, phone gotcha game. It's known for being really expensive for whales. And it's also known for being like the classic YouTuber sponsor game. Like if you're sponsoring a game, I mean, most of the time it's going to be Raid Shadow Legends on Twitch, on YouTube, wherever. You see so many people out of pocket throwing these Raid Shadow Legends sponsors out of nowhere to try to get some big money. I guess they pay big money. I don't know. This is not a sponsor. Obviously, this channel has like 5 subscribers, but I wanted to go ahead and make a video about Raid Shadow Legends, my honest review on it, and share my thoughts on just the experience as a returning player. So like my other videos, I want to make sure I have the good components of the game, the components that are maybe kind of like whatever or in the middle, and then things that I think are negative. So I want to break them down to 3 categories, explain my thoughts, and kind of give my final verdict of the game. Before we do that, I just want to give a very brief overview of what Raid Shadow Legends is. Raid Shadow Legends is a hero champion collection kind of gacha game where you will basically try to get different heroes that will basically fight for you during different parts of the game. There are campaign missions, there are dungeon missions, there are all sorts of different things. As you can see here, I have my 5 heroes. They are kind of clearing the stage, and at the 3rd round, they will face the final boss, which for this one is a dragon. Each of these different clears, campaigns, dungeons have different rewards that you're trying to get. So you can basically make your team stronger. You can level people up, ascend them in different ways, increase their skills, abilities by getting different skill books, and all sorts of different things. You can upgrade their equipment. Their equipment is kind of like an RNG-based style game or type of equipment. And so there's a lot of different factors in this game. I think Raid overall does a pretty good job of kind of slowly introducing you to the game. A lot of the content is kind of blocked until you reach a certain point. And so you're not just going to be thrown into everything and just expected to know everything. You kind of have to progress and prove that you are interested in the game and want to actually, basically commit to the game before you do anything. As you can see here, there are 291 units in the game, and there are 12 or 15 factions that you can get units from. Some of these are kind of old classic factions. Some of these are a little bit newer. When I played, the Salvan Watchers was not a faction at all. And you know what? I just said there were 291. That is just this top part. So you have to add 291 to 227 to 258 to 115. That is a lot of heroes. Now, for granted, not all these heroes are important. So basically, the epic ones are ones that are, decent middle-of-the-pack heroes generally. Legendaries are the ones that are going to be a little bit better than the epics, and then mythicals are like top tier. This was also not a thing when I played the game. And then you have kind of your feed. There are a few rares that are viable and good in the game. Your starting rare that you get in the game is actually pretty good, and so they're not like totally useless. But then you have uncommons and commons, and these guys are pretty useless. So overall, these numbers are a little skewed because not all the heroes are ones that you actually want. Some of them are feed and fodder, but you can see here that there is, close to 1,000 champions total. But of those, I would probably guess around 500 of them ish are actually usable champions that you are going to want to get. And And actually, of those 500, there are still some legendaries that just aren't good. There's still epics that aren't that good. And so of those, there's like the top tier ones that you can see in different tier lists that are actually viable. As you can see here are just some of the champions that I have in the game. I also have my storage. So this kind of gives you an idea of how much I got or I've done during about a year and a half of playing, mostly free to play. I also have my equipment over here to the right. Equipment you just basically find from clearing different parts of the game. You can upgrade it, you can enhance it, rework the stats in some ways, and then you can even ascend it to make it even better. Equipment is a very RNG aspect of the game that can be a little frustrating at times because there's certain stats that are definitely much better than other stats, but that is, that's the gist of it. As far as what you can do, you have campaign, which is just your general campaign aspects of the game, dungeons, faction wars, where you have different waves you have to clear only using certain units from different factions, arena, which is just classic PvP, different clan bosses, your Doom Tower, which is kind of like your tower that you have to progress during a certain time frame, Cursed City, which is like a map that you have to clear. Let's just show you that because it's kind of cool. You get all these rewards and clear and different things, get all these bosses you can beat too, which is pretty neat. And then Siege, which is kind of like a big clan battle. Okay, so now you have an overview of what Raid is. If you haven't played it before, no, there's a lot more stuff besides what I mentioned. That is a very brief overview. The point of this video is not to give you the ins and outs of the game, but rather my overall review and opinion of the game. So, the good. The first thing I want to mention is that even though the community online and people who play the game might be frustrated with certain things, might complain about certain things with the RNG components or the direction of the game, the bottom line is Raid Shadow Legends is actually a really good and fun game. Like, you start playing and you get hooked pretty quick. And the downside to the game is, unlike a lot of games that are kind of like AFK friendly, you play for like 10 minutes a day and you're done. If you want to put more time into, you can. Raid takes a lot of time to kind of progress. You have to put a lot of time into the game, especially when you first start. So you might find yourself getting hooked on the game and then really just time sinking it, really just putting a lot of your minutes into it. This past weekend, I probably spent way too much time playing it. I don't want to see how much time I was on my phone last weekend because I just sat around, watched sports, and played Raid on my phone all day for like Saturday and Sunday. It's really addicting, and if that's something you're looking for, Raid's got that for you. It's relatively free to play friendly if you do things correctly. I would say that's another pro. If you are wanting to whale out, this is going to be a more expensive game, but for free to play people, I think there is an experience to be had that is really enjoyable for you. I'm not saying you're going to be the best in your clan or in your like league, or you're not going to be always winning tournaments, because a lot of people will just wail out and beat you in tournaments. But I think the experience overall for a free to play player is overall positive. Like, you feel good about the progress you make in the game. You get really excited when you get a unit or a champion that you really want, or hit a certain milestone. There's a lot of satisfaction with progressing as a free to play, which I think Raid does a great job with, honestly. Another thing I want to mention is that overall, there's a lot of events and different things going on with Raid. Right now, they're just finishing up their 6th anniversary kind of party bash thing. And right now, there's a lot of events happening. But even without some of these events that are currently going on, there's still generally like a decent amount of events that take place. And even if you are not winning these tournaments, so you can see here, I would have to get first, second, and third to get really the good prizes, or get top 10 to get some of these prizes. You can still get all these prizes on the side just for participating. And these are all solid items to get. They're not just garbage trash that they're just kind of giving you for participating. They're still decent items. So I think Raid, like I mentioned, is not a terrible experience for free-to-play players. Now that the game is 6 years old, it can feel kind of hard to really catch up with some of the kind of long-term players or the whales. But I think there's actually a good argument to be made that Raid, even though there are a lot of heroes in the game, there is a lot of different combinations of heroes that you can use for different things. I have a good amount of heroes that I think are pretty solid, but there's someone else who could play the game for the same amount of time as me who has a totally different batch of heroes that works well for them as well. I don't think there are necessarily heroes that are like must-haves to be successful in the game. There are obviously heroes like Frozen Banshee, for example, that is just like known for being really good for early players and mid-game players. Same with Cold Heart, she is a beast, but these are rare heroes, and these are a lot easier to get than some of these. But there aren't really a lot of legendaries or epics that are like totally gonna just make you way better than everyone else. You can get a lot of different combinations of teams that will do a similar thing compared to other teams. Now, obviously, there are going to be combinations of different heroes that are just better or meta, but I think because there are so many different champions in the game, that there's just a lot of things you can do that make it a little more enjoyable and a lot more bearable than someone who is just totally winging it or unsure what they're doing. Now, the last thing I want to mention isn't necessarily a direct component of the game, but I think that developers have really embraced this side of something outside of the game that really makes Raid a good game to get into, is that the community is really solid for Raid. I think, like every game, there's people who are complaining or not happy about certain things with the game or the progression of it, but I think there's a lot of different content creators that are super happy and helpful. Like Hell Hades, I've watched him back in the day, and he has totally done so much for the community. It sounds like he has a whole website with a lot of free options. There's obviously different things you can do to pay for someone to look at your account to help you out and progress. But there's a lot of free things on there, free resources, free guides that are super helpful for new players. I'll leave in the links and comments below the description of this video in case you want to look at his website. But there's a lot of different content creators that do different fun things, different free-to-play accounts, and just all sorts of different things going on with Raid that I think just makes the community better. It's nice when there's a good community, and I think Raid has a pretty solid community of people who want to help. I was just kind of browsing the Reddit online, and there's a ton of people who are just like, can you look at my team? What do I need to do? Or what should I summon next? Or who should I level up first? And there's a lot of people who are happy to help. Obviously you have people who are just mean, but overall, I think the community seems pretty solid with Raid. So yeah. Okay, now getting into some of the things that I think are kind of about the game. The first thing is there's just a lot of content in the game. As you saw before, there's a lot of different things you can do. And I think at times it can feel really overwhelming. If you see what I'm doing now, I'm fighting the Hydra. I just threw this team together, so don't criticize me on how bad this team is. I just click people to put them in. But the Hydra was a reason I quit the game originally, because this boss came out and it was just like so much to figure out and learn. You have all these different things up here for each head. And I just learning which combination of units to go in and which debuffs and buffs to use. It was just a lot. And I just really didn't want to kind of jump into that. And so I decided to just take a break, and I never actually came back until now, 3 years later. I think there's a few instances like this in the game where the learning ceiling is just really high. And, for a mobile game, it just feels like a lot to have to deal with all this on your phone or on your PC, which is obviously a little bit nicer of experience. But I just think it could be a little less complicated. But for a game that's 6 years old, that's just kind of what you're going to get. Now, I understand some people like this stuff. They like the challenge, like the learning of it. And that's why I kind of put it as an thing, because some people might like that and some people, might not. Now, my final thing is the arena. I think the arena overall is not a bad experience. You get a list of all these teams you can fight. You can use a token to battle them. And then if you beat them, you get these medals, which you can use to buff your stats of your heroes. And if you lose, you don't get anything. You just kind of lose your rank. You can also refresh every 15 minutes or use 5 gems, which is nice. I'm going to fight this big bad boy team of just 4 level 1s. You can see, boom, one-shot them. I get my rewards, and I'm done. I think overall, if you just want to do the very minimum, arena is not that much of a time sink. I think team arena is annoying. I don't like having to basically wait till I see someone who has one person on each slot or someone who's just weaker. I just don't like tag team stuff in general. And they have this new feature that I didn't have before, which is kind of cool. It's called Live Arena. You basically will find an opponent, and then you will... Let's go ahead and see what it is. You'll find an opponent, and then you will basically kind of draft your team. And then once you draft your team, you will basically ban one hero from your opponent's team, which is kind of a cool experience. It kind of helps you avoid getting, just destroyed by people who are really strong or, just way farther progressed than you. Actually kind of makes like a little dueling aspect of the game. So you see I'm waiting here for this person to pick a team or pick a unit. And then I'm just going to go ahead and pick 2. I don't know, confirm. And so on and so forth. So I'm not going to go through this whole thing, but you get the picture. Cool thing. I think it's fun. I do think for people who aren't really into Arena, you kind of are stuck with basically having to do these things because there's really good rewards for doing them. And if you don't do it, you're really missing out on a lot of good things in the game. So that is another thing where if you like this kind of stuff, that's great. But if you don't, you're kind of stuck with doing it anyway. Now we're going to get into the bad things, the things I just think are not great, are kind of an unpleasant experience. And the first thing is the summon rates for different heroes is just so low. And with how hard it is to get certain shards in the game, it just feels bad sometimes where you have to basically stockpile all these shards and wait till there's an event that increases your odds and just basically blast them all at once. It gives you a really big dopamine rush if you hit some good units, but if you don't, you kind of just feel like straight garbage. And honestly, it's not my favorite system. I think it's really fun when you do pull, like it just feels so exciting. But sometimes you have to wait like 3 or 4 weeks to pull, and you're saving up all these shards at the hope of unlocking something. And sometimes you just kind of get a dud and it just kind of sucks. You can see here are the odds for all the shards. You got mythical at 0.5%, which is mythical is like the highest. And this is with a primal shard, which is really hard to find. You have your sacreds, which is basically your legendary ones. You have a 6% chance of getting these, and then the rest are not epics. And then everything else, your ancients is 0.5% for a legendary, 8 for epic, and 91 for a rare. And then your mystery, which is basically your trash one, is just basically you get a bunch of trash. And so this is what I'm talking about. It's just hard to get, all the heroes in the game or have an idea when it's just so hard to pull. They do have a mercy system, but I don't think it's really anything that's too crazy. If you're going to drop 100 ancient shards, you should get a legendary, but you might not. All right, and my final negative is just how dang expensive their pay-to-win stuff is. It is actually insane how much these shards are. Like a Void 3-pack, $70 is crazy. $100 for a freaking 5 is wild. Getting 8 primals, 50, like, these are crazy. Honestly, the primals don't seem like as bad of a deal. They're still horrible. Like, I'm not going to spend that much money. But the void ones, like a single void, $30. That is a single pull for a 0.5% of getting a legendary. You're most likely going to spend $30 to get a rare unit, which is never going to be used. That's crazy. And so I think there's stuff in this game, while no one is forcing you to spend money, and you don't play these games to spend money for most people, it is just so crazy how much some of this stuff costs. And I know people wail, and I know people spend this kind of money. And so it makes it feel even worse for people who don't, or who just want to spend like $5. Like, you can get the event passes of the daily progression stuff, and like they're a few bucks, $15 for a skin, whatever. 30 for like okay, 30 for 2 and 1. Like, there are definitely better options to get things in the game. Like 2 voids, a sacred, all this for 30 is way better than getting 1 for 30, obviously. But there are people who don't have those options, and then they end up having to drop way more. And so I think some of the money, the cost of things could be a little bit less. And I understand that the pack shop is literally the most expensive part of the game, but I just think there's got to be a little bit of cheaper way to get some of this stuff. So overall, would I recommend playing Raid Shadow Legends if you have not played before? Honestly, probably. This game is fun. Like, I enjoy playing it. I might get back into it and just kind of play it for fun now. It's been a while since I played it, but I've really enjoyed my time playing it. The only thing that's kind of hindering me from it is just the time sink that it takes to play the game. I think that's a positive and a negative. I think some people really will love having a game where you can put a lot of time into it. But also, I think it can be kind of overwhelming, especially for me who's already doing content for another game, trying to like play other games to make more videos on and doing this on top of it. Just kind of feels like a lot. So we'll see. I might play on this side a little bit, see how far I can progress, see if I can do a little better than I did before. But Raid gets an A for me. I think, it's not a perfect game. It's not even like the best game, but I think it's a game that if you're wanting to have this type of experience, it's good quality. I think the game has made overall good improvements. I think there's a little bit of clutter with all the new stuff that's taking place in the game. But I think if you want a good game to play, like this is not going to be a jank game that's just, doesn't work half the time or the community's not there. The community is huge for Raid. You'll find a lot of people that can help you. And I think if you want a free to play player, you can have fun with this game for a little while too. So overall, Raid, it gets my approval, but make sure you're careful with your money because you could spend tens of thousands of dollars being addicted to this game. So just be careful. But that's all I got for you guys today. Thanks for watching. As always, hope you have a great rest of your day. Peace.